Welcome back to BadgerBlitz TV, your Rivals.com destination for all things Wisconsin athletics. For one last time, I'm Matt Perkins, joined, as always, by outgoing BadgerBlitz.com publisher, editor-in-chief, and Mr. Do Everything, John McNamara. It's great to see you as always, buddy.
Good to see you too, Matt.
So it's a little sad today that it's our final BadgerBlitz TV. It's been like 250 episodes, give or take, I want to say, between the Coco Clint era, the me and Clint era, the me and you era. So it's a little bittersweet that this is coming to an end, but, you know, all good things must come to an end here, John. So obviously the big news around the den these days is that you are stepping down as the publisher of BadgerBlitz.com after what, 18 years, 20 years, 25 years, who knows? I mean, you've been around for as long as I've been following Wisconsin, since my junior year of high school in 2002. So I've always known the name John McNamara and associated the name John McNamara with just the best Wisconsin coverage. So I just want to personally start by saying thank you, John, for everything that you have done for this website and building an incredible community. It's not just information; it's the discussions and the message boards and the sense of community that you really built at Badger Blitz that has made it unique and special. And so, just like as someone who's gotten to work with you and as someone I consider a friend, I just want to say thank you for everything that you have done to build this site and to build a truly incredible place where Badger fans get together and can have great discussions without going over the edge, well, too often, I guess.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot, Matt. And all those things that, you said made it so difficult to kind of move on and walk away from this. It's something that, like you said, I mean, it's been 18 years, a little bit over 18 years. And it's a website that I've been on every single day for 18 years. And that, like on the day I got married, I remember TJ Raynard committed and I had it all set, and it was ready in my phone. And we stopped pictures for about 5 minutes. And my wife just gave me that look, but like she's been with me from the start. So it's been, I gotta hit publish. I gotta get it on the board, and I gotta tweet it out. And she knows that process. And we did it. Then I put the phone away for the rest of the day. But I mean, you put so much time into it, and it's such a big part of your life. And I don't really know if it's sunk in yet. I was talking to Jake Kokorowski yesterday, just kind of texting back and forth. He's like, how you feeling about it? I said, I feel good, but I don't really know yet. So, there's just gonna be a ton of stuff I missed, but like you said, it's, the stories and the content is what you focus on. But, during that process, you build that community, and, there's a lot of people that have been there throughout my entire ride, and for them to stay with us and to contribute on the board and to be those screen names that people recognize is just been so humbling. I mean, it's just amazing. And I'm really proud of the work that I've done, but it doesn't happen without, all the people that I put in the, Paul Day for giving me the start here. And then, guys like Jake and Ben Wargel, Kyle Heikkinen, who's now a college basketball assistant coach at a real high level. Dan Sanger, who's been taking photos for us for years and years and years. Clint Cosgrove, even though Clint was just kind of in my life for a short amount of time professionally, just being around him, he's a guy that you learn a ton from, and he's a guy that you want to be around from because he's so charismatic and he's got a different type of energy. Josh Helmholt is someone that, I worked with just, when we were both writers, and then he kind of ascended up and, he made sure that I was kind of taken care of here. And there's just so many good people. You don't make it this long without great people around you. And I think that's the thing I'm going to take away is just the people. And then obviously a guy like you, Matt, who I told my decision to probably maybe before I told my wife, but just because I know that you're a trusted guy, you hear stuff and you're a voice of reason that I trust. I'm going to miss all those things, but it's okay. I'm at peace with this. It happened on my own terms. So I couldn't be happier with the time I spent at Badger Blitz. And I'm looking forward to the future too, because it's not doom and gloom. It's an exciting thing that's going to happen pretty soon here.
All right. Well, we'll talk a little bit more memories here in a little bit. But, John, it's official visits. Finally, they are here. The coaching staff is excited. The recruiting staff is excited. I'm sure the players are excited. Lots of very important visitors here, especially on the first weekend here, Friday, May 30th, and on high priority targets, like I said, all over the place. John, let's throw out some superlatives for the weekend. We'll start. Who do you think is most likely to walk out the door this weekend with a commitment?
Ben Wenzel, the in-state linebacker from Appleton.
Even with the Oklahoma offer?
Even with the Oklahoma offer, yeah, I mean, that was a big one. And that was an eye-opener, right? Wenzel's recruitment was largely Midwest, right? And then Oklahoma comes in with an offer, and that kind of stops you in your tracks. That makes you take a look at the film a couple more times. And I did that myself. And then, he visited in the spring without that offer from Wisconsin. Oklahoma comes in with the offer. And then in between, Wisconsin gets that commitment from Aiden Reeder, another projected linebacker, inside linebacker, off the ball, whatever you want to call it. And then you kind of watch the dominoes fall. Wisconsin cancels its visit with TJ White. Wisconsin cancels its visit with Mason Martin, who ends up committing to Arizona State. It just kind of opens the door for Ben Wenzel to get on campus, get around these coaches again, enjoy his official visit. And then I think the expectation from the coaching staff and my expectation, going into that visit is that he ends up committing to Wisconsin. That official to Oklahoma is still very much on the board. I suppose he could take that, but if you read what's going on between the lines here, Wisconsin clears out its board with the expectation, I think, that Wenzel adds his name to this class, likely at some point during the weekend.
Biggest need?
Oh, there's a few spots you could go to. Right away I go to running back. You didn't take one in 25. Obviously, you got to take one in 26. I thought they would target two in 26, but the way they've been recruiting, it seems like one with potentially a Ryan Estrada falling in the too good to pass on category. But it's Amari Latimer, longtime target for the coaching staff, someone this group has been very high on. And I think that being there early, the consistency has put Wisconsin, likely to the top of his list. He's got a few more official schedules, some big time schools, but this is going to be huge. Wisconsin getting him up. He's going to be around his brother again. Who is just got done with his spring camp, so that certainly helps. And really, Wisconsin's pitch to him is, you are our guy. You have been our guy for X amount of months here. We want to add you to this class, and you'd likely be our guy moving forward here. So I think there's a lot of stuff working in Wisconsin's favor at a position of need, at a position with some history, at a position that will be more focal in Jeff Grimes' offense. So I think that Amari Latimer has to be near or at the top of Wisconsin's priority list, regardless of position.
Yeah, adding his brother, obviously, I think went a long way as well. And it didn't hurt that his brother had one heck of a spring. I think he grew a lot from, just people I've talked to said he grew a tremendous amount coming in from Jacksonville State, sort of getting up to, high level FBS football. I think might have taken him a couple practices, half the spring or whatever. But by the end of spring, he was someone who was really performing well. He's someone I'm very excited about next year. But let's get back to the official visits. Most surprising name on the list. We've known most of these guys who are going to be here for at least a month, maybe 2 months now. But a couple guys have been added here in the last week. Which one of those names really popped out to you?
Probably Kamari Blair, the offensive tackle from your home state. Well, I shouldn't say home state, Matt. Your current state.
My adopted state.
Your current living state of Tennessee. And like you talked about, Matt, just a name that's more recent, right? I mean, a very recent offer. And then to get him on your biggest official visit weekend is huge for the coaching staff. Not to say that, they haven't, begun that recruiting process a little bit earlier, but, you offer a guy and then get him up on campus on the weekend that you would prefer is pretty significant, especially for a 4-star offensive tackle at a position where you'd like to add one more tackle to finish things off. So I would say he's maybe the biggest, most surprising name that's been added recently. But you could also make a case for, a guy like DJ Ba, the defensive tackle from Tennessee. I don't know. I think it's a theme here, but just, going there, there's certainly some talent there. I think he is arguably one of the most important pieces on the defensive side of the ball, because obviously you know what you need to do on the defensive line. It's a crapshoot through the portal. Wisconsin took 3 last year through high school. I think they want to, equal that number again in this 26 class. He would be a very good piece. Another guy, a fairly recent offer, the staff's ability to get him on campus on their preferred weekend, I think is a pretty good outlook, although he has 4 more, potentially 5 more visits coming up. I know it's not 5. It's definitely 4 after this official to Wisconsin.
Fill in the blank. The staff will be most excited if blank commits this weekend.
Oh man, I mean, there's a ton of guys. Probably, I would say McHale Blade. You just can't get enough guys like him, right? There could be 6 outside linebackers committed, edge guys committed in this class, and if McHale Blade picked up the phone and wanted to commit, they would say absolutely yes, you are part of this class. He's just outside of our top 100 for Rivals.com, the number 4 player in the state of Illinois. He's just a special type of talent that Wisconsin would be ecstatic if they left with him this weekend. I mean, that would be ahead of visits to Notre Dame, Michigan, USC, I believe, is there. He came up with the top 7. The vibe I get is that he doesn't get out to a place like USC. I think he, from what I've heard, wants to stay in the Midwest, and a lot of those schools obviously check that box. Obviously Michigan's going to be a big player for him. Notre Dame, with these type of kids, have done exceptionally well with that Chicago area land type of guys. But this is one that he has just kind of continued to pop up on campus. He was there for the spring showcase. You're going to get him on your big weekend coming up here in just a couple hours. The staff's probably through the roof if they get a guy like McHale Blade. But you could say 5, 6 other guys from the list of 16 that are coming up here this weekend.
I would argue Jackson Samuels Ford, given how much time they've invested into him, especially given his official visit list now that just dropped. There was an article earlier this week on him, and obviously he's someone that the staff targeted very, very early on in the process and has come to campus at least half dozen times probably over the past couple of years. And, I feel like if they were able to reel him in after all of the time and effort that they put into him, that would feel pretty darn good.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been pretty high on Matt Mitchell's list for quite a while. And it was really that junior day that he took in, I believe in January, where I got a chance to talk to him. He's like, yeah, Wisconsin was there. But then Matt Mitchell gets out to my school and he spends tons of time in my school. Then he pops back into my house. And then I come up for the junior day. And that really solidified Wisconsin as, they are absolutely a player in my recruitment here. Now, recruitment has gone the right way for him, right? Ohio State is a player for him. It's going to be very difficult to get him out of Pennsylvania with Penn State making him a priority. But look, when you get these guys on your preferred priority weekend, stuff can happen. We've pumped out all these articles of every kid and the official visits that they plan to take. A lot of these guys will take that first one, maybe that second one, but then they pop. These kids have been recruited for a long time. They've seen a lot of these schools already. And, especially for even a school like Wisconsin, we've put in a ton of names for that third weekend. Not a lot of those guys are going to show up for X amount of reasons. So if you get a guy like him up, the feeling's right, the connection's right, you could potentially get a guy like him and steal him from a Penn State. How high does he rank up with Ohio State? Not sure yet, but he's got an official visit penciled in with an offer. I mean, that shows what the priority is for them. So he would be right up there with Blade in terms of these top edge targets that Wisconsin feels like are perfect fits for what they want to do moving forward there.
Yeah. And, for this weekend, it's going to be 70s, mostly sunny in Madison, no rain forecasted. So, it might be out on the lake a little bit. It's going to be a pretty darn good weekend to be in Madison.
That's what I texted someone and I said, I'm praying for good weather for you guys this weekend. And they said, yeah, we're going to need it because Madison showcases, right? I mean, you think of the game day, sure, everything is great. People love the game day, but like the summer, unique experience. They get these guys on the lake, guys like Nick Herbig, they commit, they jump in the lake. Good stuff happens when the weather is nice. It's a special feeling. It's tough to describe, right, Matt? That summer feel in Madison, it's special, and they utilize every inch of that campus to showcase what Wisconsin is when the weather's really, really nice on campus.
Absolutely. All right, John. Well, with the time we've got remaining here in the show, we had a bunch of questions from the Badgers Den about you and your time here at Badger Blitz. So we're going to fire off some of these. We appreciate everyone who has been sending us questions for years now that we get to answer here on air. It's been a lot of fun. So, John, I mean, your wedding recruiting story is pretty good. But besides that, what's your favorite recruiting story you've had in your 18 years here?
Yeah, I saw that question pop up on the Den, and I was like, man, which ones can you tell, right? There's still some stuff. Statute of limitations might still be into effect. The one I've probably told this before, but the one that always comes to me is Craig Appleton and his recruitment, because it was wild, right? And I'm going to give credit to Kyle Hakinen, who now is on staff in Denver. I think he just moved from Western Illinois to Denver, and he was really on top of that one. You would just hear some wild stuff about like Dave Dorn and those guys going down there. One piece of it was that like the uncle kidnapped him and took him to Illinois because they knew the Wisconsin staff was coming for an in-home. So the uncle grabbed him and took him to Illinois campus to put him there to make sure Wisconsin could get a hold of him. And it was like every week you were hearing like a wild twist to this thing. And obviously he was one of the bigger recruits that Brett Bielema was on, had been on during his time as head coach at Wisconsin. Yeah, like I said, Dave Dorn was in on that recruitment. You go down to East St. Louis, that's kind of a different animal in itself in terms of, the kids that are down there, the schools that recruit down there, what it takes to get in those doors, in those high schools. That one was it was a fun one to follow, fun one for Wisconsin because they got him in the end. Craig's, career at Wisconsin was brief, but that recruitment was wild. It was a fun one. And like I said, a tip of the cap to Kyle, because he hadn't in on that one. And when he would fill me in what was going on, it was wise. It was like, can we put this on the board? Can we write a story about this? What do we got to keep off? It was a fun one. Definitely a trip down memory lane there, thinking about Craig Appleton.
All right. So talk to us a little bit about the early days of Badger Blitz, sort of getting it started. How did that sort of come to be, and what was the toughest part about that for you?
Yeah, so, start with Paul Day, right? And Paul Day came in even more with more stuff to accomplish than I had. And he starts a new site and then has to get the credentials, has to prove that he's legit. And so he gets basketball credentials, he gets football credentials, and that is huge, right? Because that's 20 years ago, and that's before, these athletic departments were recognizing internet websites, right? So, for Paul to do that and pave the way was huge for me because I walked into an incredible situation. And, as a 20-year-old kid, I didn't know how incredible that was at the time. So Paul did a lot of that legwork. I think Paul's desire was to get back to Michigan, where he was from. And so he was looking for someone. And then actually my buddy, I remember driving in the car, my buddy found this ad that Paul put out, and he texted me, he's like, dude, I think you'd be good for this. I was like, sure, I'll check him out. So I met Paul at a coffee shop right outside of the Capitol. Kind of showed me what his thought process was, what his vision was. It was a good fit. I remember like an interview, if you want to call it, and just finishing up and be like, hey, where do you think John Clay's going and Josh Oglesby are going? And I think Oglesby was committed at the time, but Paul, way ahead of the game, was like, John Clay's going to wind up at Wisconsin. And that was kind of my follow-up question, that you're supposed to do on an interview, because I knew those were like the hot two names at the time. And Paul knew ahead, and Paul was great. So that was really where I got started. Paul took me on, he schooled me up, and then he just kind of passed the baton to me, and I've been doing it ever since. But again, it's just, I've had great people that have worked alongside of me, and I don't make it to this day without consistently getting those people to help out. And then they go on, like Kyle and Tom Lee, to bigger and better things. And it's been fun to watch those people grow alongside of you and then go on to do better things outside of our website.
John Clay is my favorite high school recruit Wisconsin's ever. For me, like his high school tape, his just everything about him, he on the field. Like I don't know if I've seen a better recruit come to play for Wisconsin just based on high school tape.
And I will tell you John Clay's story. When he showed up to a night practice, because he came in late, right? So he came into this night fall camp practice, and they trotted him out. He was just in like the jersey shorts, and the smile that Brett Bielema had on his face when he saw John. I don't know if I've seen a human being smile that big. And I mean, he was just beaming. So we're up top at Camp Randall. We're sitting in the stands, and Brett's just kind of, maybe he's just got the right amount of lights on him, and just the smile he had when that kid walked onto the field. That's one that I'll take away with me, because there were some twists and some turns, and I mean, just his recruitment, right, was brutal for Wisconsin to come through, because every school in the country wanted him. Ohio State was there, all these schools, and then to get him there, Brett had a smile like I don't think I've ever seen him have, and I think he earned that one, right? And John Clay, maybe didn't live up to the highest of expectations, but he had a really good career at Wisconsin, and he was a fun one to follow, at Racine Park and then at Wisconsin as well.
Definitely. Shout out to John. He's a nurse now. Shout out to John.
Is he?
Yeah.
Good for him.
Nursing school last year.
That's great. I'm happy for him. He always seemed like a good dude when we talked to him. Just a little quieter, but
great dude.
Good dude.
Absolutely great dude. He's been on with me and Bernie a couple times.
Very nice.
Yeah,
very nice.
Very good dude. What, John, has been your secret to success for running the site and creating a community that really functions really well and, for the most part, self-polices? Because we know that college football message boards can be unique places. And I've spent a fair bit of my life, I've spent too much of my life on college football message boards, let's face it. And, and this isn't me just blowing smoke up your butt, John, but BadgerBlitz as a message board, as a community, is way less toxic and way more, I would say, informative than 99.9% of other ones. So what have you done to make this work? What do you think has been your secret to success?
Yeah. I think, and I tell everyone that comes on to write for us just how important that message board is, right? I mean, it is as or more important than the content that you're putting out there. It has to be a place where people want to, every day I want to see what's going on that board, and I feel comfortable being on there, and nothing that is going on there makes me say, I got to look somewhere else. So like the time invested in there has been important, but I mean, we've had to work through some things, right? And you have to say to these, we've had some posts. I mean, like Army One, Lone Star. I don't know if you guys are listening out there. We loved you at the time. We miss you, but we had to part ways with you. And there's been a handful of those guys, of these overwhelming characters on there that, what people who post a lot are incredibly valuable. But when you alienate a group that isn't interested in that kind of stuff, you have to, it's a pros and cons, right? And, just, I don't want to say recently, but really in the last, 6, 7, 8 years, that message board has been really healthy. And that's not just all me. That's the people on there. It's getting the right people on there. There are people that I've seen out there just kind of on Twitter Space or on other boards. I'm like, hey, you seem like a great poster. Let's get you on our board. Let's comp your membership. Let's keep you going on here, because you're a healthy, good person that loves Wisconsin sports. Wisconsin's had some just gut-wrenching losses over the years, and you watch those games either in the stands or wherever you are, and you're like, man, that's a difficult loss for Wisconsin. But then you're like, God, I don't want to go on that message board right now. But at the same time, you go after those tough losses, and fans are really good about it. And, on our site, right? And it's a cathartic experience, I think, to live through those tough losses with the people on those message boards, and to get out what you need to get out, and then, be good with it. So it is the most critical part of our site. It's one of the more critical things that we do on a day-to-day basis. And I think we're leaving it in a really healthy space right now, which is tough, because there's, going through those posts, I've read over them a few times, and just the people's, it's humbling to read over some of that stuff, and it's been a lot of work to go into it, but like it's worth it, and the results have been worth it. And I appreciate each and every person who's ever been on that site and been a positive person for us.
What was the toughest loss? Because I have one that just comes to mind immediately. But
for Wisconsin,
yeah, during that time, you talk about those tough losses. Not want to go to the board. There was one. There was one for me, and it was the national title loss in basketball to Duke. For me, that was coming off of the high of the Kentucky win, which might be like the biggest win in my. I mean, the hockey national championship, that was my sophomore year, our last national title. But for me, like that Final Four win against Kentucky might be the biggest singular win of the last 20 years. And so coming off of that, feeling like you had the best team, you had just slayed the undefeated team with all the future pros, and you had the National Player of the Year, and that to me was the most gut-wrenching loss, and probably one of the few times I just couldn't even face the board. I also think probably the time my wife was most mad at me for being upset in public, because we were at a bar and I was, not on my best behavior.
I think that one, because of the magnitude of it, right? I mean, I went into that one and just kind of interacting with people. I mean, a lot of my friends are Wisconsin fans, right? A lot of my buddies that I graduated with. And there was a sense of like, we are at an all-time high with this program, but we may never see Wisconsin in this spot again in our lifetime. Exactly. So the chance to capitalize on it was just everything seemed to be like kind of unfolding in the right way. Bo Ryan gets that last kind of signature thing to be like the last check box to put on his resume that's 1,000 pages long. And then, it doesn't happen. I mean, it kind of felt like everything was setting up for that moment for Wisconsin in that time. It was the perfect team, the perfect coach, the perfect everything. And then for it to not happen, you're like, holy shit, it just didn't work out. And then like, where do you go from here now? I mean, that one is without a doubt up there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think we're going to get out of here on this because we're running up on our half hour. But John, what's been the most rewarding part of this? I mean, you've talked about the people that you've worked with a lot, but just all of this community. And I guess like, what are you going to sort of like look back on when you're bouncing your grandchildren on your knee, talking about the good old BadgerBlitz days?
Yeah. I mean, really, the kids that have allowed me to tell their stories too, and those relationships that I built, and, the parents coming in and, hey, you wrote an article about my son. That was like the best thing in the world. Right. And to get them early, I remember, you write about these kids really early, and you build those relationships with the kids who think it, at the time is the best thing in the world. And then you hit them up at this time, and they're like, I'm sick of recruiting. John, you're a good guy. Maybe I can carve in 5 minutes there. It's fun to watch their recruitments unfold. Because like I said, you catch a lot of these kids when they're sophomores and stuff. I remember talking to Hunter Woller's dad, who reached out to me. And then I met him at a basketball game. And I remember thinking, like, watching Hunter Woller's sophomore tape, I was like, this kid is a no doubt Power 4 kid, every day of the week. And then I remember talking to his dad. He's like, we're trying to figure out how to get this thing going. I think we're going to go out to North Dakota. I think Wisconsin's a little bit interested. And I remember telling his dad in Muskego High School, I was like, dude, I don't think you guys got anything to worry about. I think that you guys are going to show up to a couple camps and things are going to skyrocket for Hunter. But like, these parents, they don't know, right? You don't know that you're legit until you know that you're legit. And,
or it's the flip side, John, or it's you think you're so legit, but you're not.
Yes. And that's a tougher one to go down. And those are ones where I don't tell people that, those people that reach out and like, what do I got to do? Tell a lot of those kids, hey, focus on your grades, be a good teammate, check all those boxes. But yeah, like, Hunter Woller is a one in a, I think he's probably the best high school football player I've ever seen play.
Wow.
There's a couple other kids that are there, but look, if turn on Hunter Woller's sophomore, junior film, that kid is an absolute maniac. I mean, he is a true difference maker. But Yeah, and like a couple weeks later, Jimmy Leonard gets in contact with him, not because of me, right? Not because I had that conversation, but because like he's legit. And then Wisconsin gets him up, they offer, and things kind of go from there. So it's exciting to tell those stories. It's exciting to get on the kind of the ground floor with those guys, and then to watch them, go through their high school career, go wherever they end up. Specifically the in-state kids, I always have a soft spot for them. The kids from Wisconsin, it's fun to go out and watch them. It's fun to talk to their coaches, talk to their parents, and then watch them do whatever they do. In college and beyond. I've been covering guys like since John Clay, and now John Clay's a nurse. I just found that out, so that's cool. It's fun to cover them. It's fun to root for them, and it's fun to see them go on to do stuff beyond football or basketball, or wherever that may be.
Absolutely, John. Well, it's been a pleasure to be here with you for, I don't know, what have we been, 4 years, give or take now, 5 years, something like that. And the journey will continue in one way, shape, or form. So we appreciate everything that you've done for Badger Blitz and here on Badger Blitz TV. So for the last time, I'm Matt Perkins. He's John McNamara, and we'll see you in the den.